The Whisperer facility sprawled across a crystalline valley like a technological cancer. Kane studied it through his rifle scope from a ridge 3 kilometers away, cataloging defenses and potential weak points. The base was larger than he had expected, easily the size of a major colonial installation. Towers of the same organic technology he had seen before rose from the ground like twisted trees. Energy barriers flickered between them, creating a dome of protection over the entire complex. And everywhere Kane looked, he saw dragons. Dozens of the great creatures patrolled the perimeter with the rigid, mechanical movements of the controlled. More circled overhead in precise formation flights. Through his scope's thermal imaging, Kane could see the neural control devices burning like hotspots against their necks and skulls. "There are so many," whispered the young dragon who had been the first freed. Kane had learned its name was Sci-Fi, which seemed appropriate for a creature that could breathe plasma and fly faster than most human aircraft. 237 of our people," confirmed the Dragon Mother, who called herself Ancient Storm. Her mental voice carried grief and rage in equal measure, including hatchlings barely old enough to fly. Kane lowered his scope and considered the tactical situation. A direct assault would be suicide, even with dragon allies. The controlled defenders would fight to the death to protect their captors, and Kane couldn't bring himself to kill creatures that were victims rather than enemies, but humans hadn't conquered half a galaxy by fighting fair. "I need to know more about those control devices," Kane said. "Can they be overloaded? Disrupted?" Ancient Storm's massive head tilted thoughtfully. "The pain-givers are connected to a central control system inside the main structure, but they are protected by many layers of security." "What kind of security?" "The Whisperers themselves guard the core systems. They are unpleasant to face directly. Their thoughts are like acid, and they can burn minds with a touch." Kane grinned without humor. "Good thing I'm wearing a helmet with full neural shielding then." For the next hour, Kane worked with his new allies to develop a battle plan. Ancient Storm knew the facility's layout from her time as a prisoner. Skyfire could provide aerial reconnaissance and support, and Kane had something the Whisperers probably hadn't planned for: human, tactical unpredictability. The assault began at midnight when Dracarys Prime's 2 moons were both dark. Kane approached the facility alone, using his armor's stealth systems to mask his heat signature and electromagnetic emissions. Ancient Storm and Skyfire waited in the shadows, ready to provide support when needed. Kane's first target was the energy barrier generators. The Whisperers had assumed their technology was beyond human understanding, but they hadn't counted on 15 years of marine engineering training. Kane studied the power coupling for exactly 3 minutes before he found a weakness: human. Technology focused on redundancy and reliability. Alien tech seemed to prioritize elegance and efficiency. That meant fewer backup systems and more catastrophic failures when something went wrong. Kane placed a small explosive charge on what appeared to be a primary power conduit, then fell back to a safe distance. The explosion was small, but the cascade failure it triggered was spectacular. One entire section of the energy barrier flickered and died. Immediately, controlled dragons began converging on the breach. Kane was ready for them. Instead of trying to fight creatures that were 3 times his size and could breathe fire, he used human ingenuity. The flashbang grenades in his pack had been designed to disorient human opponents. Against creatures that relied heavily on enhanced senses, they were devastatingly effective. Kane lobbed 4 grenades into the approaching group and watched as the controlled dragons stumbled around in confusion, their neural implants unable to compensate. For the sensory overload, Ancient Storm and Skyfire used that moment of confusion to dart through the breach and begin their part of the mission, locating and protecting the youngest prisoners while Kane dealt with the central control system. The facility's interior was a maze of organic corridors and chambers that seemed to grow rather than be built. Kane moved through them with practiced stealth, following the mental map Ancient Storm had provided. His armor's sensors detected dozens of Whisperer biosigns, but most seemed to be in some kind of dormant state. That changed when Kane reached the control center. The chamber was vast, filled with towering columns of living technology that pulsed with bioelectric energy. And floating among them were the Whisperers themselves. Kane's first sight of the alien controllers made his skin crawl. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but stretched and distorted like humans seen in a funhouse mirror. Their skin was pale and translucent, showing the flow of luminous fluid beneath. Most disturbing were their heads, oversized skulls with hollow eye sockets that somehow still seemed to see everything. One of them turned toward Kane's hiding place and spoke in a voice like breaking glass. "A human here, impossible." Kane stepped out of concealment with his rifle ready. "Nothing's impossible. You just didn't plan for it." The Whisperers moved with liquid grace, surrounding Kane in seconds. One of them raised a hand toward his head, obviously intending to use their mental burning ability that Ancient Storm had described. The attack hit Kane's neural shielding like a sledgehammer hitting a titanium wall. Sparks flew from his helmet systems, but the protection held. The Whisperer looked genuinely shocked. "You cannot resist our touch, human. No mind is that strong." Kane smiled grimly. "You're right. No individual mind is that strong. Good thing humans learned to work together a long time ago." He triggered the dead man switch on his armor's power core. The electromagnetic pulse that followed wasn't strong enough to damage hardened military equipment, but it played havoc with the delicate bioelectric systems the Whisperers used. Every piece of their technology in the chamber went dark for exactly 2.7 seconds. For a human, that would be barely enough time to blink. For Kane, it was more than enough to put 3 armor-piercing rounds into the central control matrix and throw a plasma grenade into the secondary systems. The explosion lit up the chamber like a small star. Kane was already moving, diving behind one of the biotech columns as debris rained down around him. When the smoke cleared, half the control systems were burning wreckage. Throughout the facility, controlled dragons suddenly stumbled as their neural inhibitors lost connection to the central network. Many of the devices simply went dark. Others began sparking and shorting out as they're damaged. Control signals became erratic, but Kane's celebration was short-lived. The surviving Whisperers were beyond angry now. They came at him with coordinated fury, their mental attacks battering his shielding. While they pressed forward with what appeared to be some kind of bioelectric weapons, Kane fell back through the facility, using his knowledge of human small unit tactics to turn their pursuit into a running battle. He used choke points to limit their numbers, explosive charges to collapse passages behind him, and misdirection to split their forces, but he was running out of ammunition and options when help arrived in the most spectacular way possible. Ancient Storm burst through the facility's outer wall like a living missile, her massive form wreathed in plasma fire. Behind her came dozens of freed dragons, their eyes bright with intelligence and rage. The creatures that had been forced to serve as guards and weapons were now free to exact their own revenge. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The Whisperer's technology was designed to control minds, not fight open battles against enraged dragons. Within minutes, the facility was burning and the surviving aliens were fleeing toward their ships. Kane watched from the rubble of the control center as Ancient Storm landed beside him, her massive head lowering to his level. "It is done, human warrior. Our people are free?" Kane looked around at the liberated dragons, many still shaking off the effects of long captivity. Young and old, they were helping each other, tending to injuries, and celebrating their freedom with joyous roars that echoed across the valley. "What happens now?" Kane asked. "Now we reclaim our world," Ancient Storm replied. "And we remember who gave us back our freedom." Skyfire approached them, practically bouncing with excitement. "The hatchlings want to know if all humans are as clever as you, Warrior Kane." Kane laughed, suddenly feeling lighter than he had since his squad's death. "Humans are full of surprises. It's kind of what we do." Over the next several hours, as the facility burned itself out and the freed dragons organized themselves, Kane transmitted a full report to Colonial Command. The implications were staggering. The Whisperers had been orchestrating conflicts across dozens of worlds, turning species against each other while they harvested resources from the chaos, but their operation on Dracarys Prime was finished. More importantly, humanity now had allies who could help them track down and eliminate the remaining Whisperer cells throughout the sector. As dawn broke over the crystal forests, Kane stood on a ridge overlooking the valley with Ancient Storm beside him. The Dragon Mother's mental voice was thoughtful. "Your people will want to establish permanent contact with ours, I think." Kane nodded. "Probably. Humans are social creatures. We like making friends. Even with creatures your kind once thought were monsters? Especially with creatures we." Kane's decision came in the space of a heartbeat. He swung his rifle away from the Dragon Mother and toward the approaching ships, his targeting system immediately locking onto the lead vessel. If these creatures were being controlled, then whoever was in those ships was responsible for his squad's death. The first ship opened fire before Kane could squeeze the trigger. Beams of coherent energy lanced down from the sky, striking the crystal formations around the dragon family. The Great Mother spread her wings and roared, not in rage, but in what sounded like agony. The neural control devices attached to her body pulsed brighter, and Kane watched in horror as her intelligent eyes went blank and cold. Whatever programming those devices contained was being activated. Kane's first shot punched through the lead ship's hull, sending it spinning out of control. The pilot managed to keep it airborne, but barely. His second shot disabled its weapons array. The other two ships immediately changed course, moving to flank his position, but Kane was already gone. 15 years of Marine training had taught him never to stay in one place after taking a shot. He rolled down the backside of the ridge just as energy beams turned his former position into molten crystal. His armor's tactical system was already plotting movement routes and calculating firing solutions. The Dragon Mother was airborne now, her offspring following. But their flight patterns were wrong, too rigid, too mechanical. They moved like puppets being jerked by invisible strings. Kane could see the control devices flashing in sequence, sending commands that overrode the creature's natural behavior. One of the alien ships swooped low, obviously searching for him. Kane waited until it passed overhead, then put 3 rounds into its engine assembly. The ship crashed into the crystal forest with a satisfying explosion. 2 down, 1 to go. The remaining ship was being more cautious now, staying high and using its sensors to track him. Kane needed to even the odds, and he had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. He activated his armor's external speakers and began broadcasting on a wide frequency band, cycling through every known communication protocol in the colonial database. Most of it was probably useless, but embedded in the stream was something that might get through to the dragons if any part of their minds was still free. "I'm not your enemy," Kane transmitted, even as he dodged another energy blast. "Someone is controlling you. Those devices on your body are making you attack people. I'm here to help." The Dragon Mother circled overhead, her massive form blotting out the stars. For a moment, Kane thought his message had failed. Then something unexpected happened. One of the younger dragons broke formation. The creature dove toward Kane's position. But instead of attacking, it landed heavily and began thrashing against the rocks, trying to scrape the control device off its neck. The neural inhibitor sparked and flashed. Clearly damaged, the alien ship immediately targeted the rebellious dragon with a focused beam that made the creature convulse in pain. Kane put his crosshairs on the ship's weapon array and fired. The shot went wide, but close enough to force the pilot to break off his attack. That brief moment of freedom was enough. The young dragon's control device sparked once more and went dark. Kane watched in amazement as intelligence flooded back into the creature's eyes. The dragon looked at Kane for a moment, then did something that nearly made the Marine drop his rifle in shock. It spoke. The voice that filled Kane's head wasn't words exactly, but concepts that his neural interface somehow translated into meaning. "Human warrior, you ... "Yeah," Kane said, not sure if the creature could understand him in return. "I'm here to help. Those things on your family, they're controlling you, making you hurt people. Remember, fire and pain when we resist. Family forced to hunt, to kill. The mental voice was filled with sorrow and rage. We are not monsters, human warrior. We are prisoners. Kane's anger crystallized into something harder and more focused. Someone had turned these intelligent creatures into weapons, had used them to murder his squad, and was now trying to kill him to cover up their crime. That was going to stop right now. Can you get those devices off the others? Kane asked as he lined up another shot on the circling ship. Need to be very close. Devices defend themselves with pain. But if you can distract the Sky-Dash hunters... Kane grinned grimly. Distracting people is something humans are really good at. The Marine's next shot took out the alien ship's main sensor array, sending it wobbling through the air like a drunk bird. He followed up with a plasma grenade that forced the pilot to pull up sharply to avoid the explosion, while the ship was disoriented. The young dragon launched itself into the air with powerful beats of its wings. Kane watched in fascination as the creature approached its mother with obvious care and love. The great dragon tried to resist, fighting against the neural control, but the devices were too strong. The younger dragon wrapped its claws around the control device on its mother's neck and pulled. Electricity arced between them as the device fought back, clearly designed to punish anyone who tried to remove it. Both dragons screamed in pain, but they didn't let go. Kane kept the alien ship busy with precisely placed shots, not trying to destroy it but keeping it too distracted to interfere. The pilot was good, but human weapons technology had one advantage the aliens probably hadn't expected: unpredictability. Every shot Kane fired came from a different position, using different ammunition types. Forcing the pilot to constantly adapt, there was a final flash of light, and the control device fell away from the dragon mother, smoking and dead. The great creature shuddered in the air for a moment. Then her eyes cleared and she let out a roar that shook the crystal formations for kilometers around, but it wasn't a roar of rage. It was a roar of pure joy. The alien ship's pilot apparently decided he was outmatched. The vessel turned and began climbing rapidly toward orbit. Kane let it go. He had bigger concerns now. The dragon mother descended toward Kane's position with her free offspring, moving with the fluid grace that the controlled flight had lacked. When she landed, the ground shook under her massive weight. Up close, she was even more impressive, easily 15 meters tall, with scales that seemed to contain trapped starlight. Human warrior, her mental voice was deeper than her child's, resonating with age and wisdom. You have freed my family from torment. But there are others still enslaved. Kane's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. How many others? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. The Sky Hunters have been taking our people for many seasons, forcing them to attack the colonies on the edge of your space. Each attack brings more of your warriors to hunt us, while the true enemies remain hidden. The scope of the conspiracy hit Kane like a physical blow. The alien attacks on human settlements hadn't been random acts of aggression by indigenous creatures. They had been carefully orchestrated false flag operations designed to provoke conflict between humans and dragons, while some third party pursued their own agenda. Who are they? Kane asked. The Sky Hunters, I mean. We call them the Whisperers, the Dragon Mother replied. They speak in thoughts that burn, and their touch brings slavery. They have been spreading across this region of space for generations, turning species against each other while they harvest the spoils of war. Kane's armor systems were already recording everything and preparing data packets for transmission to Colonial Command. This information would change everything about humanity's expansion into this region. But first, he had a more immediate problem. The others who are still controlled, where are they? Close, the Whisperers gather them in great camps, using them as guardians while they strip mine our world. There is a facility perhaps 50 of your kilometers from here. Many of my people are held there, forced to defend the ones who enslave them. Kane looked up at the alien ship disappearing into the night sky. It would report his presence, which meant the enemy would know their operation was compromised. They would either evacuate or increase security. Either way, time was running short. How many Whisperers are at this facility? Kane asked. Unknown. They rarely show themselves directly. But there are many of our people there, and their control devices are freshly maintained. Breaking them free will not be easy. Kane checked his remaining ammunition and equipment. He had enough firepower for a small war, but against hundreds of controlled dragons and an unknown number of aliens with superior technology, even that might not be enough. Then he looked at the two free dragons and had an idea that was definitely insane, but might just work. Can your people fight back once they're free? The dragon mother's mental voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Human warrior, we have been dreaming of nothing else for seasons. Give us our freedom, and we will show these whisperers why our kind ruled the skies of this world for 1,000,000 years. Kane smiled and began checking his gear one more time. He had come to Dracarys Prime seeking revenge for his fallen squad. Instead, he had discovered something much larger, a conspiracy that threatened both human and dragon civilization. The enemy had made one critical mistake, though. They had assumed that humans would be predictable, that they would follow their programming just like the enslaved dragons. They were about to learn why that was a very dangerous assumption. "All right," Kane said, shouldering his rifle, and Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane checked his rifle one last time as the transport ship shuddered through the atmosphere of Dracarys Prime. The weapon felt heavy in his hands, but not as heavy as the weight in his chest. 3 months ago, he had been leading a peaceful survey mission on this world. 3 months ago, his squad had been alive. The memory hit him like a punch to the gut. Jenkins laughing at something stupid Rodriguez had said. Chun showing everyone pictures of her newborn daughter. Wilson teaching the new recruits how to properly clean their gear. All of them gone now, torn apart by claws and fire in less than 10 minutes. Kane's jaw clenched as he stared out the viewport at the alien landscape rushing past below. Dracarys Prime was a beautiful world, with crystal formations that caught the light like scattered diamonds and forests of silver-leaf trees that sang in the wind. But beauty meant nothing when it hid monsters. The dragons had appeared without warning during what should have been a routine geological survey. The official reports called them indigenous hostile fauna, but Kane knew better. These weren't just animals. They had used tactics, coordination, intelligence. They had hunted his people like they were nothing more than prey. 2 minutes to drop zone, Sergeant, called the pilot over the comm system. Kane nodded and stood up, checking his gear one more time. He carried enough firepower to level a small building. High-explosive rounds, armor-piercing ammunition, plasma grenades, and his favorite, a custom sniper rifle that could put a round through 3 inches of steel at 2 kilometers. All of it designed for one purpose, revenge. Command had been very clear about his mission. Intelligence suggested the dragon attacks were coordinated by a matriarch, a mother dragon, who controlled the others through some kind of telepathic link. Take out the mother and her offspring, and the attacks would stop. It was supposed to be a simple elimination. Mission. Kane had volunteered the moment he heard about it. The transport touched down in a clearing, about 10 kilometers from the target location. Kane shouldered his pack and stepped out into the alien wilderness. The air smelled wrong, too clean, too sharp, with an underlying metallic tongue that made his nose itch. 2 suns hung in the purple sky, casting double shadows through the crystal formations. He moved through the landscape with the careful precision of a man who had spent 15 years as a Marine. Every step was calculated, every sound evaluated. His armor sensors swept constantly for heat signatures and movement. The neural interface in his helmet fed him tactical data in real time, painting the world in overlays of threat assessment and targeting information. The first day of tracking was uneventful. Kane followed the dragon trails through the crystal forests, noting the massive claw marks scored deep into the metallic tree bark. Whatever had made these marks was big, much bigger than the combat reports had suggested. He found places where the dragons had fed, scattered bones picked clean and arranged in patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. That night, Kane made a cold camp in a cave system, eating field rations and reviewing his mission parameters. The footage from the attack played on his helmet display over and over. His squad hadn't stood a chance. The dragons had come from above and below, moving in perfect coordination. Fire and claws and death. Cain closed his eyes and tried to push away the sounds of his people dying. When he opened them again, his resolve was harder than the crystal formations around him. The second day brought him closer to his target. The dragon sign grew fresher, more frequent. Cain found a water source where massive creatures had drunk recently, leaving prints in the mud that were still soft. His armor's analysis suggested he was less than 6 hours behind them. He also found something else. Scattered throughout the area were pieces of technology that didn't match anything in the colonial database. Smooth, organic-looking devices that pulsed with their own internal light. Cain collected samples, but his scanner couldn't identify the materials or purpose. Whatever these things were, they weren't human. As evening approached on the second day, Cain finally saw his target. The dragon mother was enormous, easily twice the size of the combat footage had suggested. She perched on a crystal outcropping overlooking a vast valley, her scales shimmering in the light of the setting suns. Her wings were folded against her back, but Cain could see they would span at least 40 meters when extended. This wasn't just a large animal. This was an apex predator designed by evolution to rule an entire world. Around her, 5 smaller dragons moved with restless energy. These had to be her offspring, though even they were larger than the dragons that had killed his squad. They played together with an almost childlike enthusiasm, chasing each other through the air and wrestling among the crystal formations. Cain set up his sniper, positioned on a ridge about 800 meters away. The custom rifle felt familiar in his hands as he adjusted the scope and checked the wind readings. At this range, with these rounds, he could take out the mother with a single shot to the head. The offspring would be easy targets after that. He settled into the shooting position and placed his crosshairs on the dragon mother's massive skull. His finger found the trigger, and he began the breathing routine that had served him through a dozen conflicts across human space. Breathe in, breathe out. Let half the air out, hold, squeeze, but something made him pause. Through his scope, Cain watched as one of the younger dragons approached the mother with what looked like an injury. The great creature lowered her head and began to clean the wound with obvious care and gentleness. The injured youngling pressed against her, seeking comfort, and she wrapped one wing around it protectively. Cain had expected to see monsters. Instead, he was watching a family. He steadied his aim again, trying to focus on his mission. These things had killed his people. They had torn apart his squad without mercy. Justice demanded their destruction, but as he watched, something else caught his attention. One of the organic devices he had found earlier was embedded in the rock near the dragon family, pulsing with that same internal light. And now that he was closer, Cain could see that the dragons themselves carried similar devices, not embedded in them, but attached to them like some kind of technological parasite. The dragon mother suddenly lifted her head and looked directly at Cain's position. For a moment that seemed to stretch forever, their eyes met across the distance. Cain expected to see animal fury or predatory hunger. Instead, he saw something that shocked him to his core. He saw intelligence. Not just animal cunning, but real awareness, real thought. And more than that, he saw pain, exhaustion, and what could only be described as desperation. The great dragon didn't attack. She didn't call out to alert the others. She just looked at him with those ancient, intelligent eyes, and Cain suddenly realized he might not understand this situation at all. His finger moved away from the trigger as questions began flooding his mind. Why had the dragons attacked the survey team? Why were there technological devices attached to them? And why did this creature, this supposed monster, look at him like she was asking for help? Cain lowered his rifle slightly and activated his armor's long-range sensors. The readings he got back made his blood run cold. The organic devices weren't just attached to the dragons, they were controlling them. Neural inhibitors, his computer identified them. Devices designed to suppress higher brain function and induce aggressive behavior. Someone was using the dragons as weapons. Someone was controlling them, forcing them to attack human settlements. And Cain had been sent here to kill the victims, not the perpetrators. As this realization hit him, Cain heard the distant sound of engines approaching from behind. He turned to see 3 sleek ships descending toward his position, ships that definitely weren't human in design. The same organic curves, the same internal lighting as the control devices. Kane found himself caught between 2 forces he didn't understand, holding a weapon pointed at a creature that might not be his enemy at all. Everything he thought he knew about this mission was falling apart, and he had seconds to decide what to do about it. The Dragon Mother was still watching him, waiting, as if she somehow knew that the angry human with the rifle might be her only hope for freedom. Kane's training told him to complete the mission. His grief demanded revenge for his fallen squad. But his conscience whispered that maybe, just maybe, he was about to make a terrible mistake. The alien ships were getting closer, and Kane had to choose: follow his orders or follow his instincts. In the growing darkness of Dracarys Prime, with 2 suns setting behind the crystal formations, Staff Sergeant Marcus Kane prepared to make the most important decision of his life.